Eclipse was a bonus, but the fact that there was some pressure on Oracle. From our perspective, we think that MicroProfile is a huge success. The community has come together. They've built some very important and great applications. By the way, just in case you're wondering, I know shit about the technology. I'm not going to pretend that I do. I kind of, it would be, yeah. Well, actually, if you ask, yeah, asking technical questions is like, well, actually, let me put it this way. I can pretend, sorry, I know certain things. My commitment to you is if I don't know something, I'll say I don't know. And then I'll bug Kevin or somebody like that to answer it. And when we say that we think of MicroProfile as a big success, this is actually that is that because it's got significant adoption in terms of there are multiple vendors implementing MicroProfile specifications in their products. And you know, and one of the things to keep in mind is that the MicroProfile specs are being delivered in the same products that are delivering on Java EE8 or Jakarta EE8. So from a customer's perspective, they're getting a product from Red Hat or IBM or Pyera or Tommy Tribe that comes with both Java EE, Jakarta EE, and MicroProfile in the same product. And I think that's really helped to a large degree with the adoption of MicroProfile, and it's certainly, you know, there could be a little sample bias in there, but the developer surveys that we've been doing have been showing that MicroProfile is actually generating a great deal of developer interest. Now, we got a long ways to go to catch up to Spring or Spring Boot, but the multi-vendor support, I think, is helping raise awareness. But of course, the big move was, you know, over 2 years ago, when on the stage it was Code One then, right? It was like the first Code One, not the last Java one. I can't remember, but it was like, it was the last Java one, right? Yeah, and this year was like Code Dead. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like, well, it's like Dullsville. And so the big news, the big announcement was that Java EE moved to the Eclipse Foundation, and you know, we had to come up with a new name, and we did this that honestly felt incredibly painful at the time, but worked out pretty well. We did this naming competition, we did a logo competition, and we came up with Jakarta EE, and it was actually one of the few wins for me personally is I really like the sailing ship, and I really wanted that logo to win, so I was pretty happy that turned out. And it's big, so you know, and you know, I think there's sort of we'll probably hear I'm expecting to hear a theme in tonight's conversation about what the hell have you guys been doing for all these years, or you know, some variation on that theme. It turns out that this has been incredibly complicated, and I'm happy to go on record to state that if it had been any other organization other than the Eclipse Foundation, there's not a chance, a snowball's chance in hell that this would have actually happened in the end. The amount of work that we had to do and the sheer bloody-minded perseverance to put up with all the crap we had to go through to get this stuff extricated from Oracle and out into as Jakarta EE was beyond belief. Like, I knew it was going to be bad.
I will vouch for that. Really, it was very painful, and that's not just Mike talking from the Eclipse Foundation perspective. But that's a silk item, right?
Not. So it's anyways, but it wasn't just, it was painful in lots of different ways, and one of the ways that it was painful was just the sheer size of what it is that we're talking about here, right? So when you talk about 61.5 million lines of code, you know, even before it showed up on our doorstep, Oracle had to do all of their kind of due diligence on it. In particular, I think one of the most important things to, you know, have to keep iterating the importance of this is the TCKs are now open source. And they had never been open source before. So it was actually a huge job to extricate that and get it through the Oracle legal process and hand it over to us. You know, 160 new committers, 43 new projects in total. It's just it's a big bag of stuff that we've migrated over to the Eclipse Foundation. All right, so a good list, thank you, Tanya, but probably an incomplete list of all the stuff that we've gotten done over the last 2 years is, so we got, all the code contributed, so we got all the source code for Glassfish moved over into Eclipse Glassfish. We at the Eclipse Foundation had to run around and get I think there was 30 different countries where Glassfish is a registered trademark, and we had to get them all moved over to the Eclipse Foundation. We did the 2018 developer survey. Eclipse Glassfish was 5.1 was certified as Java EE8 compatible. One of the things we had to do to make that possible was negotiate a trademark agreement with Oracle so that we could actually put the coffee cup on Glassfish. You'd think that would be easy. It was not. The Eclipse Foundation spec process. So 2 years ago, the Eclipse Foundation did not do specifications. It was just not something we did. And so one of the things we had to do was invent from a blank sheet of paper a modern, code-first, open, transparent, community-driven spec process to replace the use of the JCP for all of these specifications. And then one of the things we had to do then was the Eclipse Foundation spec process is actually meant to be a template that individual brands or working groups or technologies then specialize, and so we had to create the Jakarta EE spec process, which, by the way, is about 12 lines of text. So it's like the heavy lifting was in the EFSP, and then getting to the JESP was relatively painless. There was literally no such thing as too much community engagement, and I'm sure we could always do more, but we've been trying. We've done tech talks. We do monthly community calls. We blog and email updates regularly. We did another survey, 2019 developer survey, which, by the way, showed, back to Microprofile, I think it went from, in 2018, 13% folks said that they were planning on using it, and then in 2019, 28% said they were doing it. So it like 32. Okay, so yeah, so when we say that there's a definite trend of interest in Microprofile, we do have some numbers to back that up. So then the big announcement back in September is we actually finally got Jakarta EE8 out the door. And the main, there of course, so we had to cheat a little bit. And so we don't have specifications for all of the specifications. We basically did the full end web profiles. So we did have individual specs, but they're boilerplate, right? They're basically just the Java docs so that we have the APIs. And so one of the things that's, yep. Oh yeah, sorry, yes, 2 from Red Hat, CDI and Bean validation. There you go. A little string in the back of my head every once in a while. I pull it and it says the right thing. One of the things, one of the differences between open source and open specifications is that the way that patents are treated are completely different. And one of my personal pet peeves is people who think that the Apache software license is like, brought down by a mountain by a Jewish prophet and is like carved in stone as like the best thing ever. It's actually not for specs. So for example, if you have a spec that's under the Apache license, there's no patent license that flows from the contributors to that spec to independent implementations of the spec. The way the license grants work in all open source licenses is if you derive code from the code under the open source license, then you get a patent license. The spec licenses, patent licenses are far broader. It says if you take this spec and you build an independent implementation of that spec, all of the patents from all of the companies that were involved in creating the spec are now licensed to your independent implementation. And so one of the reasons why we did EE8 the way we did it, and it's not something we particularly talk about a lot, but was like, by doing it the way we did it, all of the patent licenses from IBM, Oracle, Red Hat, Fujitsu, Tommy Tribe, who am I forgetting? Basically all the companies that were involved in these specification projects for the full and web profile, or the platform project, their patents are now licensed to independent implementations of the Jakarta EE8 specs. So that's actually a major step forward in terms of making sure that Jakarta EE is a worthy successor to Java EE. So when I say a worthy successor, one of the things to keep in mind is Java EE has been around for 20 years, and to the best of my knowledge, nobody's ever been sued for patent infringement related to Java EE, and we want to keep it that way, right? We want this to continue to be a safe platform for enterprises to use and for vendors to sell. We've already got 4 compatible products for Jakarta EE8. There was 3 day of. Glassfish was kind of obvious because it's from the Eclipse Foundation. Open Liberty was well prepared in advance. Wildfly showed up the night before. Thank you, Red Hat. And Paera announced, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, so fairly recent. Congratulations. And the Paera one is actually really important because they never, ever licensed Java EE, right? So the fact that they now are certified as a compatible Jakarta EE spec implementation is an indication of how the new open licensing regime that we have around Jakarta is going to make it possible for new vendors to enter this market. And then we won the the Duke Award, and there's a cheesy picture of me somewhere on the internet. Then Jakarta One live stream. So we put 4 of our best employees through 18 hours of hell. Thank you, Tanya, for hosting them at your house that actually has reliable internet, unlike our office. So we had 14 speakers, 2 opening keynotes. Right, for a second there I thought I did 2 opening keynotes, but yeah, so myself and James Gosling. I consider it a personal success that I actually got James Gosling on tape saying something nice about the Eclipse Foundation. That's the first time that's happened ever. So that was really appreciated. He's still bitter about NetBeans. Like, get over it. 6 industry keynotes, 6 panelists. It was really, really a huge success. I think when we first launched this, we were, if we got 200 people, that would be awesome. We got more than 1,400 registrations. I think we peaked at around 900 and change actually connected online watching at once, which for these kinds of events, online events, is huge. And so thank you, Tanya and Shabnam and everybody who participated.
Do we have any data on the replays yet?
Oh yeah. And so Jakarta EE8. So of course, there's a couple of ways to view Jakarta EE8. One is it's complete bullshit. All you did was ship the same stuff over again. That's the cynical view. I hope I convinced you. It actually took a lot of work to get there, but there were some things about the way that we did it that were very much by design. So Jakarta EE8 is exactly the same as Java EE8 because that's the way we wanted it. And the reason why we wanted it that way is we wanted to make it absolutely brain dead easy for all of the vendors to switch over to use the new brand and the new specs, and for as many of their customers to switch over without any disruption to their operations whatsoever. So now we can take a whole ecosystem and shift it from Java EE to Jakarta EE with the absolute minimal disruption to all of the parties involved. And it's important to recognize that Java EE is a 20-year-old technology, but it's still a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem. There's still thousands and thousands of customers that are running applications and on this every day and running mission-critical business applications on this. We don't want to break it. So we still kept the JavaX namespace. The TCKs are exactly the same, but they're, of course, under an open source license now. Yeah, it's the same, it's the same, it's the same. We have compatible implementations, and it's the same. Okay. Um, so it's fully open source, and the third bullet here, shared burden. So one of the things that is going to be a hard cultural change to get into effect over time is that it is a 20-year-old technology, and because of that, and there's been 20 years of history in terms of a certain patterns of behavior. And by that I mean everybody expects that Java EE is this thing that comes from Sun, then Oracle, that shows up, and then vendors implement it, and you buy it, and it's their problem if anything breaks. But now, this really is a community-led adventure, and there is a certain element of shared burden. And one of the things that is fundamentally different about the new way of doing things compared to the old is, and I can't repeat this enough, the TCKs are open source. So, if you're a Java EE user, now a Jakarta EE user, and your vendor has been shipping you something that's been annoying you for the last 10 years because they screw it up every single release, you can now go at a test, make it part of the TCK, and they don't get to ship it until they pass that test, right? That's a completely different way to interact with your vendors than what you've ever had before. Of course, they have, some committer actually has to accept the test. But they're lovely people. I'm sure they will be very agreeable, assuming that your test doesn't break the product that pays for their paycheck. And vendor neutrality is something that's very, very important to the Eclipse Foundation. It's fundamental to the our core values. And so, the way that we set this whole thing up to be both vendor neutral while giving maximum amount of continuity for everybody involved has been absolutely key. All right, so what's next? So a lot of this is based on the developer surveys that we got. So what did we hear back? Cloud native, multi-cloud, pick up the pace on innovation, investment protection, open spec process, business mitigation, and modernize the developer I'm sure that's supposed to say experience. Expertise. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. Some of the things that we know we need to improve on is better support for cloud native architectures, native integration with Kubernetes. I can say that out loud. I have no idea what it actually means in practice. I mean, in terms of, I roughly understand what it means, like how we would go about doing that. I'm not exactly sure. Pick up the pace in innovation. We want to add more specs, and we definitely need to improve the tooling support. So we ship EE8, which means that at some point we're going to ship an EE9. So what do we want to do for EE9? That should be a topic of some conversation. Okay, so my personal preference is SE11, big bang, and get rid of all the cruft. And that's EE9. If we do big bang, we probably need to do something. Now, it could be a binary compatibility layer. It could be working with JetBrains and Apache and Eclipse to make sure that there's good refactoring tools. All of the above are necessary. The thing to remember is the Eclipse Foundation is not a vendor, right? So we don't have any developers to do any of that stuff. So if we're going to get better tooling support, people are going to have to, either the vendors involved or people from the community are going to have to step up and make a difference. But then again, so I have this hypothesis that it is actually possible for us to have our cake and eat it too. So when I say, EE9, if we were actually to do EE9 the way I just described it, which is, Java SE11, get rid of all the specs that nobody cares about anymore, and do big bang and move all the namespace over from Java X to Jakarta all at once. If we do that, that means that we've done another whole release and we still haven't done any innovation at all, which sucks. However, so that's the cake. Now let's eat it too. I think what we can do is in parallel, so that's the platform, all right? So in parallel, we could allow the individual specs that are going to continue to survive and continue to move forward after they rename everything over to the Jakarta namespace. they could start a new branch and build a new version of that spec and release that as an individual spec. And so for like a concrete example is, it's possible that we would ship an EE9 with exactly the same version of servlet that we have right now, moved over to the Jakarta namespace. But in parallel, the servlet spec team could build a new version of servlet, release that, and it could show up in Jetty and Tomcat and others, while we're still, you know, being pretty safe and conservative on the actual platform. So I think, I mean, this is just me talking, so it's not completely insane.
I want to say, you said we should allow it. I would change that to say we should encourage it.
Yeah, sure. The single most important thing for me in that equation is you can't change anything until you change the namespace over to Jakarta. Right, so the agreement we got with Oracle is we are not allowed to modify anything in the JavaX namespace. So as soon as you add one method, right, to the interface, you have to rename everything over to Jakarta. Which is, by the way, part of the reason why I think Big Bang makes the most sense, is because as soon as you start pulling on that thread, you know, you're going to end up with a ripple effect through a lot of stuff. Other things that, you know, people talk about in terms of things that they want to see: CDI alignment, more microprofile, microservices, cloud native deployments. We've already talked about that. So people have said they want modularity. My sort of reaction is be careful what you ask for, because you could get it good and hard. I'm not entirely convinced that modularity is something that we need to tackle anytime soon, but not that I get a vote. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so we stop the recording.